In this video, we're going to take a look at adding custom CSS and custom PHP to your WordPress website. First, we will look at CSS. What is the purpose of CSS? CSS means cascading style sheets and is a style sheet language used to design the look and feel of your HTML. The four primary technologies used to create a WordPress website are HTML, CSS, PHP, and JavaScript, also abbreviated to just JS. HTML is essentially the framework. CSS is the styling. PHP is the functionality. JavaScript can be used for design and functionality, both on the front end and the back end. Most people will only really need to learn a bit of HTML and a bit of CSS to be able to use a WordPress website efficiently. Most of the time when you'll be using PHP functions, it's because you will find a function that you want to try and you'll be just adding it to your website and maybe making a few adjustments. So, let's look at adding custom CSS. By default, all WordPress themes have an additional CSS option inside the customizer. We can access that by going to Appearance and Customize, or we can go to the front end and we can just click on Customize. As you will see at the bottom, there is additional CSS. If we click on that, it has some instructions, and then there's an input box where we can actually add our custom CSS. So, if we close this and try and find something we can customize within the code, within the HTML here. So, let's right click and go to Inspect. I'm using Chrome, so this is Chrome's Inspect tool. If we click on this little Inspect Element button, we can then hover and find different sections that we could test different HTML for. So if I click on the background and then I scroll up and maybe find the body, we can see the background color here is set to this grey color, F5, F5, F5. I could choose something else just as a test. Say we wanted to do it pink as an example, and I could copy this CSS, copy, close, and now if I refresh, this change will be lost because I'm just inspecting it within my browser, not saving anything. If I go back into Customizer, click on Additional CSS, and then Paste, you can see that's already had an effect. If I wanted to change it to black, type the word black in, but ideally you want to use the actual color code. For true black, that would be 000, or you can put all 6. While this is perfectly fine for some basic CSS edits, it's not the way I prefer to add my CSS to a site. I personally prefer to do it in the back end with a syntax editor that actually gives me some feedback on the code that's going in and also makes it a lot easier to manage. This little box here, personally I find this a little cumbersome to work with. So depending on how your theme's set up or which theme you're using, the way you add CSS might differ. Some themes and some plugins will allow you a different way to add your CSS. What you want to avoid is having lots of different places where you have CSS, because then if you ever come to debug something in the future, you're having to check 3 or 4 locations when really it's much better if everything's in one place. The plugin I recommend for adding custom CSS to your WordPress website is the simple Custom CSS and JS plugin. If we go over to our dashboard and we go to Plugins and Add New, we can type in Simple Custom CSS and JS. There we go, this plugin here. Click Install, activate, Now you'll see a new menu item, Custom CSS and JS. Obviously the JS stands for JavaScript. So, add Custom CSS. We could call this Custom Styles if you want to keep them all in one place. Or you could just call this Header Styles if you want to just add the styles that you're adding to design a custom header. That's one option you have. You can compartmentalize your CSS or you can keep it all in one place here. I personally tend to keep it in one place unless it's something very specific I might turn off later. So we can do the same thing here. Add the CSS. Publish. And you can see up here it's active. If I come into the customizer and remove this and publish and close, you can see the color that we originally started with, which I've added here, is now active on the front end. If you're using the Genesis theme framework, I like to use a plugin called Genesis Extender. This allows me to control my CSS, JavaScript and PHP all within one plugin. As you can see in this website, if I come to Genesis Extender Custom, I'm presented with this page with a series of tabs across the top. This allows me more control over the Genesis framework, and it allows me to have one easy place to add my CSS and PHP. What I like about the CSS editor here is if I put a mistake in there, it highlights to tell me unknown property. So the way it highlights your CSS makes it easier to spot your mistakes, and it's just all in one place. If we go over to functions, this is where you would put custom PHP functions. So if we go to a website where I've already got some popular WordPress functions open, change the default gravatar in WordPress. This is a tutorial which you will probably find over time as you search for how to do things, and you can see they're recommending we use this function. So we've obviously got to change the URL as well, but we won't do that. We're just going to quickly test this out. If we copy this function, we can then paste it here. Often people will say, you need to put this code in your functions file. The problem with that is, if you edit your theme and you edit the functions file, when you update that theme, that functions file will be overwritten and your custom changes will be lost. So it's important to keep your customizations separate from the core files of WordPress, your theme, and any plugins you're using. This way, these changes will be maintained after updating. Then we'll click Save Changes, and that function would be applied. After adding PHP, you want to check the front end and make sure your website's working properly. This website's a shell at the moment with no content anyway, so this is exactly how it looked before, so it hasn't broken anything. When you're adding custom PHP, it's wise to take a backup first if you're not confident with what you're doing, because adding PHP can crash your site, and in some cases, if it's applying to the front end and the dashboard, it can prevent you from getting back into this dashboard. In this case, this PHP is set to only apply on the front end. I would have to check this box to apply this PHP to the dashboard as well. So just keep in mind, PHP can potentially break your website. You want to make sure it's only applied on the front end, not to the dashboard, unless you absolutely need it to apply to your dashboard too. If you're not using the Genesis framework and you're using another theme and want to add custom PHP, the plugin I recommend using is a plugin called Code Snippets. Let's go over to Plugins, Add New, and let's search for Code Snippets. Here you go, you can see Code Snippets, 200,000 installations, very positive reviews. So you know that's a trustworthy plugin to use for this type of facility. Typically adding PHP via your dashboard can create more security problems. So only do this if you actually need this facility. If you don't need to add custom PHP, there's no need installing this plugin. But if you absolutely do, then this is the best of the options available. Now it's installed, we just go to activate. Now you can see there's another option on the menu called Snippets. If we go Snippets and then add new, we could call this snippet default gravatar, and then we could just paste the PHP function in here. As you can see, run snippet everywhere. That would include the dashboard and the front end. You can just choose to have it on the dashboard, or you can just choose it on the front end like I was recommending a moment ago. Then we would save changes and activate. And that custom PHP is now being applied and it's live and running. If we go to all snippets, you can see it's turned on. If you want to just turn this PHP function off, you just do that. Just switch the toggle. Now it is worth separating up your functions, because if you ever have a problem that's coming from one of your custom functions and you have them all separated out and named appropriately, it's easy to come here and just turn them off one by one, and by the process of elimination and refreshing your front end of your website, you can work out which function is causing your problems. The complexity may vary depending on the type of customizations you're trying to do, but by using tutorials online and popular websites with PHP functions like WP Beginner, you can collect different pieces to allow you to customize your website. For custom CSS, one of the best things to do, like I was showing you a moment ago, is to use the inspect tool within the browser, Chrome or Firefox, and then by selecting different sections and by highlighting different components, you can practice by looking at the code that's already there and doing a basic course on CSS, and some of the basic controls will give you that step up, allow you to do a bit more with the styling of your website. In most cases, if you're using a page builder like Beaver Builder or Elementor, you're not going to need to use CSS as much as you used to need to use it with other themes. And that's everything really in terms of adding custom CSS and PHP.